Investment advisory services offered through Independent Solutions Wealth Management and Blackridge Asset Management, LLC. Peak Brokerage Services, LLC is not an affiliate of Independent Solutions or Financial Guys, LLC.
Podcast, baby!
You're listening to The Financial Guys.
This is the sickness that is liberalism.
All these liberals love Bill Clinton. Let's put the budget back to where Billy was.
People like Andrew Cuomo, people like Barack Obama, people like that have no business experience or skill whatsoever.
Here's Glenn Wiggle and Mike Lomas.
All right, welcome back to the Financial Guys podcast. Thank you for joining us. We certainly do appreciate it. If you like the show, by the way, folks, you can find out more information on what we do. We manage money for a living Monday through Friday. You can go to our website at thefinancialguys.com. You can find our Twitter handle there, our Facebook, whatever page, and whatever else we have out there, Instagram, right?
Anything social media related.
You can find there.
Yeah.
If you like the podcast, do me a favor as well and click the subscribe button below. Also like it and share it with your friends. That's a huge help for us to share the message. That's really big. So if you can do that, we'd appreciate it. And of course, thank you as well for always for listening. Today we've got a couple of things. Probably makes a little bit of a shorter podcast just because it's a busy week for us. We got a lot of stuff going on. And of course, we'll be back live in studio this Saturday for 2 hours on WBEN as we usually are. But a couple of things I wanted to get to, one of which, of course, is a local story here. And this is the fact that these local politicians that we have in Western New York, honest to gosh, they don't get much worse than this, right? I've never seen politicians attack the very businesses in their own communities.
If the goal is to create a loser mentality, well, you're winning.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like it. Non-stop attack on the businesses in this community. The very businesses, by the way, that have built themselves up in the total incompetency of New York State, right?
Yep.
I mean, so in this case, it's Spot Coffee. You've got Timmy Kennedy. I'm actually reading this out of WGRZ. Tim Kennedy released a statement about the situation on Thursday afternoon, urging a boycott of the business, urging people to not buy coffee at Spot Coffee because they are interested in unionizing, and apparently he's saying, look at obviously Spot Coffee doesn't want that to happen, so they're trying to fight it. Tim Kennedy is saying, you know what, just boycott the business. Well, guess what? I'm going to now stop at Spot Coffee and buy a cup of coffee. But Tim, you are an absolute loser.
No question. Whether it's Tim Kennedy urging boycotts of Spot Coffee, whether it's Mark Poloncarz organizing a union protest out in front of New Era.
Yeah. Think about this.
Whatever.
New Era Cap, by the way, founded in Western New York, stayed here forever, highest taxes in the country, highest regulations. They could have very easily moved out of here decades ago.
Yep.
Instead, because their roots were here, many family members were here. They fought through all the incompetence, total incompetence of New York State. Now you've got Spot Coffee, who's done the same thing.
Right.
Spot Coffee is a Buffalo company. They're, by the way, a downtown Buffalo company. They were downtown Buffalo when all the crackhead, the only thing on Chippewa Street was prostitutes and crackheads.
Yeah, Spot Coffee.
And Spot Coffee took a chance.
They did.
And opened up and worked hard in spite of all that garbage. And now you're going to try to throw them out of business. Tim, you are a loser. You start a coffee shop and you organize it. Why don't you unionize your own coffee shop and put it right in our face? But you won't. You don't have the stones to open
No, they never do. And the best part is whenever they profess to say, well, we want to have equal wages, we got to pay, they find out that, all
their interns are working for free.
Oh, you're not actually paying your people $15 an hour, Bernie. Or, hey, Hillary, you actually still pay your women less than you pay your men. So, look, you get off your high horse, you politicians, especially, I never forget Tim Kennedy. We were on the Government Affairs Committee. I'll never forget this. The first time I met Tim, he came in to give a presentation as to why he should be in the New York State Assembly or Senate or whatever he is. And I never forget leaving that meeting going, holy cow. This man is dumb as a bag of turnips.
Yes, well, see,
he's proving,
of course, proving it right.
But in Western New York, of course, hey, he's got a Democrat behind his name, so we got to pull that lever and vote him in.
Let's unionize a coffee shop. Because we can't get a freaking job at another coffee shop if you don't like that one.
Because the conditions are probably so bad there. right. They got child labor going on, right? They're working a 14-hour day. The coffee could be way too hot. It could possibly burn them, right?
Let me let you in a little secret, Tim.
What a joke.
All the coffee shops are hiring. They all hire. They're all Irish.
What a joke. If you're an employee you don't like Spot Coffee, here's a tip. Go down to Starbucks, pick up a resume or pick up an application.
Spot Coffee,
right?
do what the rest of the country is doing, move to a place that's business friendly.
It's amazing.
So
But these liberals,
by the
though-
way, at Spot Coffee, by the way, they actually built their business around this left wing, let's hang out,
hippie kind of
love each
coffee
other.
shop. Yep.
Yeah, but as I've been saying for literally the last year and a half, 2 years, they are starting to eat their own.
Absolutely.
They are cannibalizing themselves. And here's another, but unfortunately,
You would
Spot
think,
Coffee will
though-
not open up another location probably,
I wouldn't.
right? If I was Spot Coffee, I'd say, okay, I'm moving to Florida, I'm moving to Tennessee, I'm moving to Texas, I'm moving to someplace business friendly. I'll probably end up letting these locations, because I owe money on them, sort of float. Eventually, probably, you'll see them go, just bye-bye, just like everybody else does.
These politicians, though, they don't understand the fact that when it comes to private businesses in their communities, they should just keep their mouths shut.
Yeah.
They really should, because protesting and going after businesses is absolutely inappropriate. Completely, I don't even care. Look, whether you like Spot Coffee, you don't like Spot Coffee. Whether you like New Era, you don't like New Era. It is absolutely inappropriate for people like Mark Poloncarz, people like Tim Kennedy, to call for boycotts of private businesses. You know how hard it is to start a business in Western New York or New York State in general? Let me just tell you for a second. You've got to deal with your workers' comp. And if you don't get that right, the fines start at like $1,000 a day. And be rest assured, they'll show up. You got to deal with the Department of Labor. They'll show up too. They're going to probably stop by and do a payroll audit at some point. You better make sure your signage is up, because they're stopping by for that as well. You better make sure your payroll is right. We use Buffalo Computer Search because we know that they're going to do it right. But the fact of the matter is, if it's not right, they're going to come in, they're going to look at your payroll as well to make sure everyone's being paid properly, being paid in the books. Then you've got to deal with New York State insurance, right? The disability insurance. You've got to have that also. Then you've got the other myriad of regulations you got to deal with. Like in this building, we had to add water fountains, or we were going to have. We got a variance for it. So thank you, Town of Amherst. It's a state law. It's not even a town
we did get the
law.
variance?
We got the variance. We can now talk about it.
So believe
But
it or not, we had to have
ridiculousness.
a water fountain. They were not going to give us an occupancy permit.
Right.
Allow us to occupy our building unless we put in a water fountain.
Now, mind you.
Now, if somebody was starved, like dehydrated, we could have given them water out of the fountain. I drink. By the way, I drink water out of our fountain every day.
Yeah, we have sinks.
I
right?
seem to be still here.
Right, we have
I'm not
sinks.
green or
It's
anything,
okay.
so.
But yeah, so we had to agree. So I mean, the myriad of regulations. I mean, God forbid you're starting a business that also requires other permits. I mean, my gosh, if you're trying to do like an auto dealership or a mechanic shop, and you got to deal with regulations on disposal of oil, you got a tire
I
disposal.
won't
You got
mention names.
Good Lord.
I was over the weekend. I was out of town with a chiropractor, and I'm thinking our business was regulated.
Yeah.
And he started to go through all the regulations and all the things they have to do as far as health insurance goes and as far as Medicare goes.
Right.
And so if you want to help people who unfortunately only have Medicare, right? Well, good luck. And by the way, if you get busted not submitting it the right way and keeping track of everything, and he said, Mike, I literally have to put somebody on the payroll just to sort all that stuff out.
Right.
And by the way, the minute it's wrong, it's my fault, not their fault.
Right.
And they're coming in to try to find me.
Exactly.
And sue me. I said,
Exactly.
it's
amazing.
It sounds like our business.
This is right.
You can't get away from it. Like I always think it's just the financial industry.
No,
but it's not. Everything's regulated.
You go back like I don't know, 50 years.
The bread maker is regulated.
It is.
Yeah.
You go back 50 years, and it was something like, and don't quote me on these statistics, but it's close. It was something like 1 out of 25 businesses had a license requirement. Now it's 1 out of 3. Right? I mean, we've gotten to a point in this country where hairdressers need to have a license. Now, can't the free market fix that?
I would think.
I mean, seriously, do we really need to have licenses for hairdressers? Look, if you're getting lice going in there, right? If your people are walking out with like butchered hair, guess what? The free market's probably going to handle that on its own.
Yeah.
I don't think you need a government bureaucrat to come in and say, well, you're closing down, right? It's ridiculous. Who was it locally here? Was it Sean Ryan who kicked out
Yes.
Chick-fil-A, right?
Yes.
Went after Chick-fil-A because, God forbid, they support traditional marriage.
I
My God. How could you possibly support marriage between a man and a woman? And if you do, you are racist, sexist, or whatever else he called them. But you cannot sell chicken in the Buffalo airport.
Yeah.
Now they're being investigated by the feds.
He claimed that you just because they wouldn't open on Sunday.
Oh, I see.
It's a Buffalo airport. Let me tell you.
What a joke.
Let me
But
tell you
these
they'll
politicians,
survive
though,
without chicken on
whether
Sunday.
it be Sean Ryan, whether it be Tim Kennedy, or whether it be our own Mark Poloncarz, newsflash, guys, stop attacking businesses, because when all the businesses are gone, nobody's going to pay your salary anymore. You get that? Yeah. So, Mark, when you have no money to fix the roads and New Era is leaving, there's one more business that's not paying taxes tax in Erie County. When Spot Coffee leaves, that'll be one more business not paying tax in Erie County. Who else just left recently? Who was the other, the printing plant that just left? Another couple hundred jobs are leaving as well.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Well, it doesn't matter.
It's funny.
Another business leaving, right?
It's funny. And by the way, when you hear the success stories in Buffalo, New York, which a lot of these politicians will grab onto, the most recent one is M&T Bank's going to create 1,000 jobs down at the old HSBC tower that we used to work in.
Great.
It's not true, though. Most of those jobs are being shifted over from one side to the other,
Yeah.
just like when you
Right.
look at the development in downtown Buffalo and they said, oh my gosh, look at all the things that are happening. Look at all these new businesses that are popping up. It was just this mass exodus from the largest building in
Right.
the area to the surrounding
right,
area, right?
right.
And the hot 38 stories, 100% vacant for the last 10 years.
Did they forget that they lost how many thousands of jobs from HSBC?
Yes.
When they pulled out of the state
Yeah.
completely?
Yeah.
I mean, they forget about, the bad side of things,
No,
right?
always the positives.
But look, if our politicians are going to attack businesses, and by the way, folks, and Tim, this is specifically for you, other businesses that are thinking about relocating here are reading our paper. They're following our news, right? That's what we would do.
Yep.
If I was looking to relocate somewhere, and we did relocate to Florida, as far as another office goes, our home office of the broker-dealer, we picked Palm Beach. Why? Because we were looking at the regulations. We were looking at the environment. We were watching the papers and watching what's going on down there.
We had a very strong conversation about should that broker-dealer be in Buffalo because we're here majority of the time. We do travel back and forth. Or should that broker-dealer be in Florida? And by far, the group voted
No, it's no
Florida
question.
because of all the regulations.
It was no
and taxes.
question. The taxes, the regulations, whatever. But
Which is a shame because we really could have used that business, that headquarters here as we continue to grow. It would have been a huge asset for the city of
that
Buffalo.
firm, by the way, now has 15 employees, all hired in Florida. That could have been in Western New York, but we just couldn't do that. And we just wouldn't
And
have
it'll
made
be
sense.
30 and 40 and 60 and 100, and they'll all be down there, not here.
Right.
Yeah.
And now what we did is if we were looking at the Palm Beach paper, right, if we were reviewing that and it was this politician attacks this business, this politician's out protesting in front of that business, this politician's calling for a boycott of that business, we might have reconsidered and done it in maybe Texas.
Yeah. Yep.
Maybe we would have put it in Tennessee. Maybe we would have put it in Arizona. Maybe we would have put it in Vegas or someplace like that. But we didn't. We looked at the papers, no problem. Now, when businesses are looking for Western New York and they're saying, you know what, I'm thinking about relocating to Western New York, and they open up the paper and they say, oh, look, there's Timmy Kennedy, a New York State politician, a New York State assemblyman, attacking and calling for a boycott of a private business because apparently somebody there doesn't feel like they're being appreciated as an employee. I'm sorry. Go to college, get an education, go get a full-time job, perhaps.
Yeah.
No,
And
but
there's
look,
Marquee polling cars right next to him.
right next to him holding a sign.
Good
I'll
job.
never forget and this is what's amazing to me is the fact that this is not a right to work state. How you can have states in the country that force you to join a union, and that's not illegal in the 21st century is beyond me.
By the way, that's not us not liking unions. That's saying
No.
if you don't like your union, if
You
your
shouldn't be
union
forced
is
to
not
join it.
supporting the values that you believe in, you shouldn't
Right.
have to pay the dues every month.
That's right.
And I worked at UPS when I was in college. I loaded trucks, right? And I have to be honest, those union dues, I was working part-time. I ended up leaving there because the union dues were taking such a big chunk of my money every month. I said, it was great. At the time, I think, I should show you my age, I was making maybe $8 an hour, while everybody else was paying $4 or $5 an hour, right? I thought, $8 an hour.
Right.
Well, the union fees, no matter whether you were part-time or full-time, are the same.
Right.
So they were eating up a big chunk of my pay.
Right.
And I said, but I was only getting 3 hours a night, 4 hours a night. If I was 40 hours, 50 hours, it wouldn't have mattered. 3-4 hours a night. So I ended up leaving there because of that union. It knocked out any chance of me actually recovering that by the end of the month.
I had friends of mine who were working at Bell's back then. Remember the old Bell's supermarkets we had in Western New York? They've been out of business for 20 years, but they were working at Bell's back in the 80s. And I'll never forget them looking at it going, God, I got to be part of this paper baggers union or whatever it was. It was grocery baggers union.
Baggers
They have a union for grocery
'Cause there
baggers. They were
wasn't-
bagging groceries because, again,
'Cause there
I guess
wasn't-
the work conditions are so brutal that the union had to be there to protect them.
And there certainly wasn't any retail shops looking to hire
they were
outside
making
of
like
them.
$3 an hour, and like 50 cents of that was going to the free union
That's
dues. And
brutal.
I'll never forget them lamenting the fact that they got to pay these union dues, and there's no choice. They had to, whether you like it or not, you're part of the union. The fact that that's still allowed in this country is ridiculous. You should be, you should have that decision as the employee.
And by the way, you
to
can be
decide whether or
pro-union
not.
and still believe you have the right to not join a union.
Absolutely, but if the
We'll take
union's
a
not
break.
representing, if the union's not representing what you believe in, then absolutely. But let's take a quick break. Again, folks, we do manage money for a living. Again, if you like the podcast, if you like what you're listening to, do us a favor, share it with your friends, and click the subscribe button below. We certainly do appreciate it. And don't forget, we also do a radio show we've done for 20 years from 2 to 3, from 1 to 3 every Saturday on WBEN. It's also simulcast on WFTL AM 850 down in South Florida from 1 to 2. And of course, you can always go to our website at thefinancialguys.com for all the information on our social media links, including our Twitter feed, Instagram, as well as Facebook. Take a very short break. We'll be right back on the other side. Thanks. All right, welcome back. You're listening to the Financial Guys podcast. Thanks again for listening. We certainly do appreciate it. And once again, if you can click the subscribe button and like it, share it with your friends, we do certainly appreciate it. For more information on everything that we do at the Financial Guys, we do manage money for a living. Again, please feel free to visit our website at thefinancialguys.com. We got to go national here and talk about this because this, I'm telling you, well, if you're a liberal, there is no history. The day started this morning, and anything you said yesterday or before doesn't count. And God forbid the mainstream media ever call them out.
Well, that's
this,
why
right?
it doesn't count.
I mean, it's just amazing. They get away with so,
Well, and don't forget, I mean, their whole platform and everything they've done, the result has been a miserable failure, yet they never actually look at the facts of what they've put in place and the results of how that ended up going.
The cause and effect,
Okay, we're California. We believe that there's a big disparity between the rich and the poor. So let's implement all kinds of welfare. That gap got worse. Wow, let's do it again and again. The gap got worse. Wow, let's do it. It's almost like, is there something wrong with them? Like, what part of your brain is missing that you're not catching on to this?
As we've said multiple times, liberalism, if you truly believe in liberalism, it's a mental illness.
Yes.
There's no question about it. So Biden, right? Now, it's one thing 10 years ago you listen to a guy like Barney Frank who goes, 10 years ago, I was talking about renting homes.
Yeah.
And you go to,
here's a video.
Barney, here's a video. You said, right off, I think everyone should. There's no problem with home ownership, and then I never said that 10 years later, right?
But by the way, to your point, the mainstream media, outside of Fox calling him out a few times, has never once called Barney Frank out on that.
Never.
Nor will they call Joe Biden out on his garbage.
The best part is they break the system. And then they come in and they go, we can fix it, right? So they break the housing system with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and the Department of Justice going after, under Andrew Cuomo, HUD going after banks and force them to lend money, the CRA, Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton. They break the system, and then we allow them to put the legislation in place to fix the system. Barney Frank and Chris Dodd. Chris Dodd had a sweetheart deal with Countryside Mortgage. He goes, I didn't know my mortgage rate was lower than the rest of the country. I didn't know I got a special deal. Hey, buddy, you were the head of the finance committee in the House and the Senate.
Everybody should know that. To your point, though, about, and this might be a little bit off subject, but your point to the government causing problems and then fixing them, right? I want you to think about this. We had a commercial real estate crisis, right? Now, the building we bought in Western New York was probably a little bit of that bad regulation where years ago they said, okay, if you're a commercial bank, if you're borrowing money to build a commercial piece of property, anybody can get a loan if the bank gives it to you. And then these people would take loans, they'd build these buildings, they'd get a tenant, and then when the tenant moved out, they'd just float it back to the bank. Right. We had a crisis. We lost Gold Dome, Big E, right? Yeah. The result of that, however, was these same liberal politicians took that and moved it over into residential real estate and said, now everybody needs a home, just like they needed a commercial real estate business years ago. So then everybody needed a home. We had a real estate bubble. We had a collapse. It ruined that system. Now, by the way, just to keep this in mind, and this is a little gray area out there, they did the same thing to the student loans.
I was just going to say, I knew you were going there.
And so then it'll be, the next thing will be the student loan crisis that they just caused, and it'll be somebody else's fault. Not enough people getting I mean, it's oh my God. And then you got to wonder, after they destroy the student loans and the universities, and that hurts the economy. What do they shift to?
Right.
Because they're never going to learn.
Well, they'll shift to something else. They'll find something
Absolutely,
else.
they're gonna
The
shift to
amazing
something
thing, though, is that they're always calling for those big bad insurance companies. They're charging too much money, and big bad oil is charging too much money. But you never hear liberals talk about big bad colleges charging too much money, do you?
No.
Why is that?
No. Or you never hear about all the wealth that they have themselves.
Right.
Right.
Amazing.
Never
right?
hear about that.
So this though has got to take the cake here. This is absolutely classic. So now everybody in the country, unless you live under a rock, knows that we had a Mueller investigation. We know that basically the Hillary and the DNC, her campaign in the DNC, created this whole fictitious scheme of Russian interference. We know that there was, if any interference, it was like they bought $100,000 of Facebook ads. But the liberals are still out there talking about the fact that Russia basically handpicked Trump in their mind and interfered with the election to wipe out Hillary Clinton. And the best part is
he's way easier to steamroll over than the liberal Democrats
Hillary,
like Clinton.
That you can just easily buy off, right?
Right.
But the best part is Biden comes out with this statement, and this is really amazing. He comes out and he says, the Russian election interference wouldn't have happened on my watch and Barack's watch.
Who was president when that was all going on?
Let's see. So are you telling me that the Russian interference happened after Trump was elected?
maybe in 2020.
Did it just happen now?
It's going to. Oh, I got it. Okay.
I don't understand, because if the idea was that the Russian interference started in 2016,
if you really believe in
2014,
Russian
right?
interference, it was happening right under your nose, right under your watch.
Yes, Joe, it did happen on your watch. You were there.
Right.
You and Barack were in the White House at the time.
Yeah.
You guys were president and vice president before Trump and Pence were president and vice president.
Your liberal friends made the story up after.
Right.
But
nobody, outside of Breitbart, nobody calls him.
No.
He's on CNN's New Day 2020.
Sure he is.
And he's talking about this. And the answers are, look, that would have never happened. What's happening with Putin, while Putin is trying to undo our elections, he's undoing elections in Europe. Look at what's happening in Hungary. Look at what's happening in Poland. Look at what's happening. You think that would happen on my watch and Barack's watch? You can't answer that, but I promise you it wouldn't have, and it didn't. Does he need like a brain check? Should we get him to the hospital for a brain scan?
Meanwhile, there was plenty of places around the country that voted 110% in favor of Barack Hussein Obama.
Right.
The inner city of Philadelphia being one of them, where 100 people registered to vote, but yet 130 votes came in.
Right.
All for Barack.
We have a turnout in the country of about 50%. And yet in some liberal areas like L.A. and Philadelphia, 100%, and sometimes 110% of the voting population showed up.
Right.
I can tell you that if we gave away free T-bone steaks in the front lobby and we advertised the surrounding 1 mile area,
be lucky to get 30% to 40%.
Not 100% would show up. We could be giving away gold bars in the front lobby, and 100% wouldn't show up. So to tell me that 100%, 110% showed up to vote for Barack Obama, that's voter fraud, folks. That's exactly what that is. And don't think that by the way, good for what's his name for suing Como and the state for driver's license for illegals.
Mickey Kearns.
But don't think,
by the way, Mickey's a good dude.
We'll have to get him on the radio show. But don't think that's not exactly the Democrat playbook, right? That's exactly the idea. We get them driver's licenses, we make them legitimate. Next thing you know, we're going to be sending them voter registration cards. And you can't. Now, by the way, it's racist to ask the question whether or not you are a U.S. citizen or not. Why is it racist? What if you're a black guy and you're a U.S. citizen? Can't you ask that question?
Yeah.
Is it racist to ask that guy the question?
I would be absolutely insulted if I happen to be a black man right now, and you're telling me that I'm not smart enough to go get a driver's license and figure out where to vote.
But you don't even have to. You can just ask the question. They're fighting now over the census
but what they're saying
question.
is these people aren't bright enough to go get a driver's license, to go get ID. And that's what they're telling. If I'm a black man, I am pissed off.
Well, if
I am insulted.
Well, and they are, and that's why they're leaving the Democrat Party and going to Trump and Republicans, because they realize that they're being hosed, and especially when it comes to illegal aliens.
Yep.
Those illegal aliens are taking a lot of those entry-level jobs that oftentimes hurt those minority communities the most. And study after study shows that. But the thing is, when I can't remember, the politician came out and they said, well, if you don't want to give driver's license to illegals, that's just not right. That's somehow it's environmental racism.
racism.
It's ridiculous, right? Or the census
heard that
question.
last
Now suddenly asking the question whether or not you're a U.S. citizen or not, it's not asking, it actually does ask in the census, I believe, what race you are, but somehow that's not racist. But to ask if you are a U.S. citizen or not, now somehow is racist against what? Who? Latinos, perhaps, but somebody came out and said we can't ask that question because we feel it's a Republican plan to suppress the numbers of the people living in the community. People will be afraid to answer that question.
Why?
If you're a U.S. citizen, I don't care if you're black, white,
What do you
Hispanic, Chinese, doesn't matter. If you're a U.S. citizen, are you intimidated to answer a question whether or not you're a U.S. citizen or not?
Seems pretty simple.
So who's
Yes
going to
or no?
really be intimidated by that?
Yeah.
Who are the ones that are going to be potentially not going to answer the census that's going to hurt the right number? What class of people do you suppose that might be?
I wonder who.
The illegal aliens, maybe? If you're not here legally, would you be worried about answering the question? Guess what? You're not supposed to be answering the census.
Yeah.
If you get a census in the mail and you're a legal alien, you're supposed to say, I don't answer this. I'm not here legally.
Are they
right?
actually going to get the census
Good Lord.
anyways? Probably
But
not.
the thing is, here's the best part, and Rush talked about it this week. The question of whether or not you're a U.S. citizen has been on the census for decades. Barack Hussein Obama took it off.
Yes.
He took it off.
Right.
Right? So if he took it off, why? See, Rush gets this right. And this is where the Democrat Party completely missed it. We're always on the defensive.
Yeah.
Why aren't we on the offensive? Why
Yes.
weren't the Republicans on the offensive when they were removing the question? They should have been hammering the Democrat Party
And that is
about
to
it.
the point of the failure of the Republican Party to not learn from what Donald Trump has done.
Right.
And we talked about this. I talked about this with Nick Langworthy when we had Nick on a few weeks ago. The Republican Party, and by the way, if you look at the states like New York and California, oftentimes the history of the Republican Party is extremely weak. There is so much material right now for the Republican Party to fire up their base in a state like New York, yet they refuse to take advantage of it, right? I mean, they've refused to call out Andrew Cuomo and all the corruption and where's the Buffalo Billion and Common Core and the Safe Act. Simonelli, right? All your this was your best friend who's now in jail. They refused to take the offensive road, and we finally had somebody do that. His name was Donald Trump. We finally had somebody do that, and guess what happened? They won. The Republicans did a little bit of that the first time around after Trump won, and guess what? They were winning. They won, and then they backed off. They played their garbage of we're gonna sit back. I remember Chris Collins
We're gonna
saying,
reach across the aisle.
You just want the government shut down. Yeah, because guess what? When we did that, we were winning.
Right.
We were winning.
Yep.
We were talking about fixing the budget problems and the massive amount of debt out there. And the minute you Republicans went in a shell, all that went away and the debt came back. I know we're up against the clock. I just wrote down U.S. jobs report was good. I said it's so funny. The mainstream media always shocked.
I know.
Always shocked that the U.S. jobs report is good. I remember under Obama. I remember under Obama, every single time they were shocked the opposite way.
Yeah,
it's
always.
We think the economy is going to come in at about 2.5, 3%.
Oh, 1.2.
1.2. We are shocked by that. We are shocked by that.
Yeah.
Now, the jobs report comes back aggressively good, shocked about it again.
Yep.
And it's funny, I don't know who one of the Democrats was this week, but they said they're really nervous. And the mainstream media is really, really attacking Donald Trump right now for this, what he said about Epstein 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But what that tells you, by the way, is they are extremely scared to find out who is going to be. It's going to be a lot like that Spitzer list, the client list.
Yep.
It's going to be a lot like that. Now, I'm not saying what Donald Trump said was okay. I think he said something like, hey, I'm into young girls too. I don't think.
He did not say that. He didn't say that.
He
what
did.
he said, no, what he said was,
he said
he likes he likes pretty girls, young ones I hear.
Young ones I hear.
Is what he said.
So whatever. But clearly what Donald Trump was referring to is he likes pretty women. Okay. Very different than getting on a plane.
Right.
And flying to an island
right.
that we're finding out now that island had all kinds of young girls being abused.
Right.
And let me tell you, the mainstream media and the Democrat Party is scared to death now.
Well, they're going to,
because they know their scumbag friends are the ones on that list.
Yeah.
It's not Donald Trump's name that's flying to that island on that list.
He wasn't on
it's
the
Bill
flight
Clinton.
thing as far as I know.
It's Bill Clinton. And Bill's trying to play dumb now. Oh, I didn't really know. Geez, that's funny because I think the plane log said you were on that plane on the way there.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Just saying.
Well, Bill Clinton's like, I don't ever remember the name.
Yeah, I bet.
What Trump said was
he didn't remember the name of Monica Lewinsky either, but the DNA test proved wrong.
Yeah, well, Trump says a lot of things about a lot of people, right? So he's and typically Trump is very he
Well,
praises a lot of people.
Let me tell you, 25 years ago, he was an actor.
Well,
That's what he was doing, right?
But you have
he
to
was
remember,
making out to be this big thing for real estate.
But what he said was the typical Trump comment. Oh, yeah, I know him. Great guy. He's a great guy. You know, I hear this
totally
about him.
taken out of context.
He just, but that's Trump, right?
Yes.
Trump is like, he's just, that's what he is. Like, oh, wonderful people. And look, he's a great guy. He praises people.
Yes.
He does it oftentimes. So I don't know if he even knew the guy.
Right.
But he said, oh, yeah, I know Epstein. And
let me
he's
tell
a
you,
great guy.
this might backfire big time
on
on the mainstream media. It might backfire big time on the Democrats. They're scared to death of it. That's why they're spending their time continuing to go after Trump. Yeah.
Well, they're going to try to tie this guy to Trump as much as possible, but it's not going to work.
It won't go
it's
anywhere.
Not going to work.
It'll backfire. But what they got to be really careful about is Donald Trump floating a little information to say, hey, where was Billy? Let's look into this plane flight. Let's look into who showed up at that island.
How about this? Let's look into who cut the deal with him. Who cut the immunity deal with him?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Because that was cut under Obama. Who cut the immunity deal that gave him a federal immunity from prosecution? Who cut the 13-month sentence that allowed him to get out 6 days a week to go to work all day?
Yeah, what were the ties to that?
Yeah, who cut that? That's what I'd be looking into, is that which corrupt person within the Justice Department or FBI
I'd be getting a list
that?
I'd be getting a list
that's
together
the real question.
of every single person that was on that private jet to that island, and I'd want to know what they were doing.
Look, we know Clinton is a dirtbag. We know that, right? We know that he, is obviously with Monica Lewinsky and many others, Clinton's a dirtbag. Yeah. We know that. That's not going to change, right? But I think the more important thing to me is, and again, it comes back to the FBI. I always say this about the Parkland shooting. Who took the phone call?
That's right.
Who took the tip calls at the FBI? Are they still working? Are they still working the tip line? Did they get reprimanded? Yep. Did they get fired? What happened? Because there was 2 tips that specifically said, hey, this kid is going to go shoot a school. This kid right here, he lives at 123 Anywhere Lane.
Yes.
Maybe you should go pay a visit to him. Okay, who took that call? Nobody. So there's no account of. That's what I want to know when it comes to Epstein is who was the one responsible for it. All right, one last thing, and I know we have to go. And this is just a classic failure of government, and it's just typical, not our country, but another country. And this is what you could expect if the Democrats ever get their way in this country, right? The Democrats have come out and openly said, we want to take your guns away. They've said that, right? There's multiple politicians on record saying, you don't need certain guns, we're going to take them. So obviously you had that tragic shooting in New Zealand, the mosque shooting. They tried to tie it and say he was a right-winger. He wasn't, right? He was an environmentalist wacko on the left, right? Mm-hmm. But nevertheless, he shot up these 2 mosques, killed a bunch of people. Of course, the typical knee-jerk bureaucrat reaction is ban all guns.
Yep.
And so immediately New Zealand came out and said, we're banning all semi-automatic weapons. It doesn't matter, shotguns, pistols, anything semi-automatic, and multiple rounds are going to be outlawed. You got to turn them in. Everybody cheered in the world. Oh, see, New Zealand can do it. The U.S. can do it.
Well, they saw the success that Chicago was having. That,
so here's the success they're having thus far, okay? They have about 1.5 million guns in private hands. So far, they have a mandatory turn-in for semi-automatic firearms. So far, take a wild guess at how many they've received.
1.5, I'd say 10%.
10%? Anybody? 10%? 10% would be 150,000? Anybody? Yeah. Rochelle? No? Okay, guess. 700. 700. So at this rate, let me get my little hand calculator out.
It's a lot like the gun buyback program in the city of Buffalo.
It
has done absolutely nothing to stop the violence in the city of Buffalo. Not a thing.
Right. Let's see here. I'll just do the math here. Divided by 700. In 2,142 years, they will successfully institute their gun ban in New Zealand.
That's
so,
right. Assuming
good luck.
over the next 2,100 something years,
good luck.
Everybody continues to hand in
anyway,
guns. And especially the criminals. They're
they're the first ones to turn them in.
First ones.
Yeah, 679 of those 700.
First ones. Anytime the city of Buffalo has a gun buyback program, you see.
Yeah.
All the drug dealers in line saying,
up.
now is the time for me to find God and change my ways.
That's right. They turn them right in. That little old lady down there, she was a risk.
Yeah.
Serious risk.
My favorite story ever from the gun buyback program in the city of Buffalo was they were offering like $150 a gun, and some guy was smart enough to go out and round them up for $50. He was just buying guns everywhere for $50 and trading them into the city for $150.
Even better, in Maryland, they did a high-capacity magazine buyback. It was like $25 per magazine. And a few smart folks went online, ordered them from Amazon for like $12.
Yeah.
And went and doubled their money right there.
you
It turned into 100 of them. So anyway,
Unreal.
that's how it works. But that's going to do it for it, folks. Again, if you like what you heard, do us a favor. Click the subscribe button below. We do appreciate it. And share the podcast with your friends. If you want to find out more information on what we do, go to our website at thefinancialguys.com, where you can find all of our information on our social media links, as well as our office number and different departments that we run. Again, thefinancialguys.com. On behalf of Mike Lomas, I'm Glenn Wiggle. We're the Financial Guys. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you on Saturday on WBE Network.